an exhibition designer. This presentation will be Seldom is Heard, Voices of the Cowgirl, and it's an exhibition proposal utilizing adaptive storytelling to support the development of historical empathy. The description says adaptive storytelling in the exhibition setting is any form of storytelling that can be affected in real time by visitors and their decision-making and their impacts. So I would like to, at this time, invite Ciera to introduce herself and go ahead with her presentation.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. Hello, my name is Ciera Iveson. I am a master's student at the Fashion Institute of Technology and a freelance exhibition designer. I'm a white female in my 30s with brown hair, wearing a blue dress and have a blue background. My pronouns are she, her. This is Seldom is Heard, my master's thesis, and I'll be talking today about some of my research to support the development of historical empathy through adaptive storytelling. So to give us a roadmap for today, the first part of my presentation is going to talk about the research and theory behind an adaptive storytelling design framework. And then part two is going to give you the application of that framework in an exhibition environment called Seldom is Heard, Voices of the Cowgirl. And to get started, I wanted to share with you why I'm passionate about this and decided to research this, and why I think it matters to the museum and experiential community. As I got started on this process, I started thinking a lot about the nostalgia, bias, and misconceptions we all have about American history and our history wherever we're from, and that the History Museum plays a really pivotal role in correcting those biases in their community so that folks can integrate the knowledge and lessons of history in a more meaningful way in their lives. I was thinking about that and what stories were personal to me when I spontaneously stopped at Buffalo Bill's mansion in North Platte, Nebraska on a cross-country drive last year. I'm from Reno, Nevada, and come from a long line of rural Western families, and misconceptions about life in the West is something I see often. So Buffalo Bill's Wild West show was big to tackle. I decided to zoom in on cultural misconceptions spinning off from that, and decided to share perspectives on the history of the cowgirl. And believe it or not, the Wild West woman you see is my grandmother and namesake in rural Nevada in the 1950s. So the thesis statement, the guiding light of this project, is that museum visitors come to historical exhibitions with preconceptions, biases, and relationships to content which can prohibit them from empathic experience, inclusive thinking, and active learning. Adaptive storytelling is a way for visitors to receive and process content within the designed environment, and this can foster critical thinking, relevancy, and connectivity to new information. It's important to me to holistically integrate adaptive storytelling into the exhibition that can incorporate a visitor's perspective and introduce them to new ones, enabling history museums to be a place of active engagement and conversation. Talk first quickly about adaptive storytelling. Adaptive storytelling is any form of storytelling that can be affected in real time by visitor decisions. There's a couple of different ways that adaptive storytelling exists in the museum setting now. In some examples, there are scripted story paths controlled by the visitor that adds a layer of technology to the exhibition. A great example with a lot of research is the Chess Project from 2011 to 2014 at the Acropolis Museum in Athens, Greece. A subtle example of adaptive storytelling are exhibitions that are responsive to the physical location of the visitor in the gallery, like the recently renovated Hyde Park Barracks Museum in Sydney, Australia. In this example, visitors wear Bluetooth headsets that provide custom audio based on where they're standing within the experience. Another AS example using apps to deliver custom content is found at the World War I Love and Sorrows exhibition. In this example, a visitor selects an avatar and the visitor approaches different gallery artifacts. They receive Easter egg content about that artifact as it relates to their chosen avatar. In exploring what was out there with adaptive storytelling, I saw two opportunities. First, could an adaptive storytelling system be implemented with limited device usage, allowing visitors to move naturally between physical and virtual exhibition elements? And second, I felt there was a further opportunity with adaptive storytelling to provide even more personal and specific content journeys to each visitor. So now we're going to think about historical empathy. The primary goal of the system I'm developing is to help visitors resolve biases about history to better integrate the lessons of history into their lives. Historical empathy plays a pivotal role in that goal. Historical empathy is the reconstruction of people's perspectives through the acquisition of knowledge and understanding of the broader historical contexts in which figures have acted and analysis of their possible motives, beliefs, and emotions. Historical empathy is really composed of two parts: emotional connection and contextual understanding. And both parts really need to be there. Without a contextual understanding, we may be reinforcing our personal biases about a particular area of history. And without the emotional connection, we're less likely to engage deeply with our learning or to integrate that knowledge into our lives, which is the end goal here. So these emotional connections and contextual journeys are shaped in part by an individual's experiences. So I explored the impact of the visitor's entrance narrative in the exhibition setting. A visitor's entrance narrative can be defined by three different metrics: the fundamental way an individual sees the world, the information a visitor already has on a topic, and their personal experience that supports their understanding. So how do we start to shift these perspectives? I found a lot of inspiration from different avenues of social psychology and education research, and by work by social psychologist Stacy Sinclair. So researchers have found that humans consistently believe they are less biased than strangers. Researchers think this is because an individual person understands their own internal reasoning, but they don't understand the internal reasoning of others. So building on that research, shared reality theory suggests that humans make sense of the world through creating a shared reality with others that reflects their inner states. We search for people who share internal reasoning similar to ours and reinforce our worldview. This is also what we see playing out on social media algorithms all the time. So the research further shows that people's attitudes are influenced by the people we encounter, even briefly. According to Stacy Sinclair, wearing one's heart on one's sleeve is critical to bonding with others, which in turn can create empathy and understanding between humans. Studies have shown that simple things like wearing a shirt that indicates your values has an impact on other people who see it. Wearing your heart on your sleeve, so to speak, reveals the inner workings of your mindset, helping others understand your logic. So using all of this research, I wanted to develop a system that reveals the inner workings and perspectives of historical figures with different views in a way that visitors could see themselves and their stories reflected. For my purposes, I'm calling that bonding content. Then I wanted to challenge visitors by sharing the inner workings of someone who may have different views from the visitor. This balance between bonding and challenge content is mirroring the emotional connection, bonding, and contextual understanding, challenge, needed to develop historical empathy. Additionally, from previous examples of adaptive storytelling, we know we must carefully consider the goals of the visitor in visiting the exhibition, as well as the learning style of the visitor for adaptive storytelling to be effective. My proposed system receives three types of inputs: visitor areas of interest in the subject matter, which will be used to understand their bonding preferences when they check in for the exhibition; the visitor's location in the gallery, which will help indicate which content the visitors may already have seen; and the visitor learning style, which will be determined through the time the visitor spends in each gallery. From there, the system will use keyword-linked content to deliver alternating bonding and challenge content each time the visitor interacts with an adaptive storytelling station. I also began part 2 with a holistic design framework based on the lessons learned from previous applications of adaptive storytelling. Design development in part 2 was focused on a strong story integration between the physical and virtual moments to maintain immersion and story for the visitor. I also wanted to include accessible and immersive technology moments and to think about how to use interaction metaphors for additional opportunities to develop empathy through physical design. So this brings me to part 2, Seldom is Heard. So the original idea for Seldom is Heard was that cowgirls are like diamonds. No two are the same, but they're created by the same forces. I developed this exhibition for the Autry Museum of the American West, who has a mission to bring together the stories of all people of the American West, connecting past to the present to inspire our shared future. We had a lot in common. My audience are adults and young adults in Los Angeles. The exhibition explores the mindset of the cowgirl through multiple perspectives. We learn about a wide range of different cowgirls from different time periods as we explore the forces that created the cowgirl: social forces of race, class, and gender, survival forces of life in the West, and personal forces of women looking for alternate ways to live in America. Crucially, this exhibition wants to look at the mindset of the cowgirl in all its complexity and contradiction. Here's a look at the RFID system in the exhibition that will deliver the adaptive storytelling content. So visitors are going to enter the gallery in the top right with the arrow. They'll have checked in and received their RFID badge from the desk, as well as entered any accessibility, language, or personal preferences for the system. This will also include any of their bonding content. Everywhere in the gallery in the tan, there will be passive tracking of the visitor. We're going to be aware of how long visitors are staying in different areas. The orange lines are RFID thresholds, indicating that the visitor is moving into a different content area. And the green circles are the active adaptive storytelling stations, where visitors will engage with the technology and be receiving custom content unique to them. So when the visitor enters, they'll have a choice. They can follow the social path, the survival path, or the personal path of the exhibition. The idea here is that no matter what happens, each of the visitor's agency in this moment will drive their personal adaptive story. Each path has an anchor cowgirl who acts as a guide for her section. You'll learn about many cowgirls in the exhibition, but these three hold down the fort. You have Annie Oakley on the social path, Calamity Jane in the survival path, and Stagecoach Mary Fields in the personal path. Once visitors make their choice, the exhibition story will evolve as a give and take between the visitor and the content. There are several opportunities to change paths along the journey. So here we are on the social path, exploring the forces of race, class, and gender, and how those forces shape the story of the cowgirl and the individual women who live this lifestyle. The path is anchored by Annie Oakley, and on this path, visitors will learn about the ways cowgirls escaped gender norms and became iconic around the world while changing expectations for women in America. You can see in the gallery, we have a mix of traditional museum vitrines and graphics, as well as the adaptive storytelling stations, which allow for a degree of privacy and space for each visitor. I thought a lot about how the visitor engages with this moment of technology. I've already picked the proximity-based RFID as a seamless way to be tracking visitor movement, and I wanted there to be some sort of a metaphor or movement for how the visitor went from these physical to virtual moments. So my original background was an actor. I come to this field from the theater community, and a really important acting technique is called the psychological gesture, developed by a man named Michael Chekhov. And this is a tool used to help actors develop empathy for a character. It's a gesture they pick that defines the deepest want or need of their character, and the actor will repeat this gesture often in rehearsals and fold it sometimes into their performances. In many ways, embodying a character is like wearing one's heart on their sleeve, and in this case, visitors can embody a cowgirl. So I developed 3 gestures. Annie Oakley tips her hat, a sign of her balance between challenging gender norms and also fitting into certain roles that society needed her to be. Calamity Jane squares her shoulders and put her hands on her hips, representing the balance she had of living a more masculine lifestyle in the West. And Mary Fields brings her hand up to her chest, representing the many things she carried, including famously 2 guns under her skirts, the mail she brought on her Star Mail route, as well as the role she played as a figure in her community. Here's how the gesture comes into play in the exhibit. Visitors will step up to the static screen. They'll receive a prompt. In my prototype, I used the words "follow me," which were effective. And then an actor representing the cowgirl will be on screen completing the gesture. The visitor will complete the gesture, and then they'll receive their custom adaptive storytelling content. The visitor can stay on this screen, and it'll alternate between the bonding and challenge content as we go, or the visitor can move on to a later adaptive station and the pattern will continue. An example of what challenge content might be like in this section, let's say a visitor has been learning about cowgirls as activists, and it's time for them to be challenged. The system may share a fact that still stumps historians, which is that Annie Oakley, while sewing herself bloomers in secret, came out publicly against the bloomer movement for other women. So that would add some nuance and color and texture to our understanding of cowgirls as activists, our understanding of Annie Oakley, and our understanding of the broader cowgirl mentality. I got a chance to prototype these gestures with colleagues at the Fashion Institute of Technology, and the results were really promising. I was gauging and testing the accessibility of the gestures and the use of the physical movement, as well as what the testers' responses were to the content they received after completing the gesture. Participants were not aware of my reasoning for picking the gesture. They didn't know the gestures ahead of time, and everyone came in and did the gestures alone in a room with me. With the Annie Oakley hat tip gesture, a tester responded. She thought the gesture was almost like a secret code saying, "I see you, I understand where you come from and what you've been through." With the Mary Fields gesture, a participant noted, The gesture was well understood with the sound of the thud at my heart. At first, I felt I was picking up a bag or weight or struggles of someone metaphorically. I loved that answer because both were true of what I was hoping or thinking of when I created the gesture for Mary. So I left this prototype excited by the connections participants drew between the movement and the content, and the discovery that the act of mimicking another person is fairly easily understood as a way to interact with technology. So we'll zip through the rest of the exhibition here. The personal path explores the vision and spirit of individual women and the drive that led them to create a life outside of traditional expectations. This path is anchored by Mary Fields. And on this path, visitors learn about cowgirls who followed a personal vision for their lives and marched to the beat of their own drums. And on the survival path, we explore the forces of nature in the American West and the danger, adventure, and loss many cowgirls faced. The path is anchored by Calamity Jane and her gesture of squaring her shoulders and putting her hands on her hips. On this path, visitors will learn about the day-to-day lives of cowgirls and their connections to animals, nature, and gear. They'll also learn about women who became cowgirls out of necessity and not choice. At the end of the exhibition, the adaptive storytelling system delivers a custom moment where each visitor is greeted by a cowgirl. The system will pick which cowgirl the visitor spent the most time with to have a personal moment with device-free augmented reality and haptics. Visitors will see their name and the cowgirl enter the room and have a special interaction. Annie Oakley will get ready to enter the stadium, Mary Fields will pack her bag, and Calamity Jane will cause a little chaos. This is a chance to get a sense of the physical presence of these historical figures after getting to know them through the exhibition. So far, we've hopefully been engaging visitors, we've been challenging visitors, and now we want a chance for visitors to take a step back and think about all the things that have just come together as a part of this exhibition. Space is also a small challenge moment. They're surrounded by objects that are cultural depictions of the cowgirl. And so far, the only objects have been very personal items. It will hopefully give visitors a chance to now compare and contrast the cowgirl that they've maybe seen or thought before attending the exhibition versus the women they've gotten to know. And finally, visitors will take this all home in an app. I think it's a great opportunity to have their custom story with them to return to things that may have interested them in the exhibition. So in conclusion, to go over the overall theory and approach to the adaptive storytelling system, as well as the exhibition experience, we're going to start the visitors in a place of recognition where they see their stories and feel seen and heard. And from that place, they'll hopefully go on to engage and have an exploratory learning process. In place of active discovery, we'll take select moments to challenge the visitor, making sure that they have a contextual understanding of the history. Finally, we'll bring them back to a personal moment of connection with a historical figure, and then give a chance for them to reflect on everything they've learned. I want to thank SEGD so much for their time. I want to give a special thank you to Christina Lyons and the faculty at FIT for all their support. And thank you so much for being here and sharing with me today.
Thank you, Ciera. That was an amazing presentation and just a wonderful subject. We will take questions in the chat line and we'll handle those at the end of the 3 presentations. And Amy, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce the final presentation that will be played.
Great. Thanks, Deb. Unfortunately, our next presenter had a time commitment conflict. They're from the University of Houston, but we want to definitely share their exciting project. They were the 2022 SEGD Global Design Award winning project called Unfiltered, The Paradox of Water on the Gulf Coast, which received a Merit Award in exhibition. So we're going to play their presentation, and we have a brief description and some juror comments that I'll read to you as it plays. So Unfiltered focuses on life-giving water, how it connects and threatens us, and how water on the Gulf Coast represents global crisis, flooding, subsidence, stormwater runoff, and water inequality. The exhibition investigates this relationship through a literal and metaphorical lens using color progression, redaction, data, and cinepoems to uncover not only the statistical reality of this compromised resource, but also the unresolvable medical physical ones. And the juror comment for this project is a very accomplished and realized exhibition We love the quality of the environment graphics, the choice of the translucent hanging scrim materials, and the juxtaposition of images and text. The subject matter could be understood through the visual language and qualities of the exhibition.
All right. Thank you, Amy, and thanks to our team from the University of Houston for that award-winning presentation. Now we'll go ahead and begin our moderated conversation. And I'll give a little bit of a frame on there. And then if you have questions, we will take questions from the participants here with us today, as well as from the panelists that presented. So our discussions today addressed, in essence, two major topics. One, the evolving role of graphic design to actively engage underrepresented and marginalized design educators. And the second major theme was the use of adaptive storytelling to impact museum visitors in real time using historical empathy. So if we have any questions from the audience today, we'll take those. And if you'd like, you're welcome to put them in the chat line. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I see two, Deb. Sorry, I was on mute trying to tell you that. We have two. Angela, you had a question. Would you like to ask that?
Hi, Amy. Thanks for finding that. Joanna, I just wanted to ask a little bit more about what you see as your next steps, given the outcome. I know that it's pretty fresh because you just did the exhibition and the symposium, but what do you see maybe as from the outcomes that you've observed so far? Where would you like to go with further engagement on these important issues?
It's It's an excellent question. Thank you, Angela. That I started using computation for graphic design and typography in 2005. So almost 17 years ago, that it was not easy for me to find opportunities. Then I realized that I need to create my own opportunities. Also, this exhibition is creating opportunities for academically underrepresented graphic design educators. For instance, like me or other graphic design educators integrate between digital art, graphic design, or diversity, where we can belong. So SEGD is a great non-profit organization, also AIGA, also CAA, and TEL, they are all provide excellent research opportunities, but there is always gray areas that it's not easy to find where we have to belong. So purpose for this project as an exhibition and the symposium to creating and providing opportunities for academically underrepresented design project that I hope I will keep, because this project has received 2 grants from Birmingham Trust and Wisconsin Alumni Foundation, that when I proposed with the 23 co-investigators, we already proposed a traveling exhibition and traveling symposium. So I'm talking with the Iowa State and RISD for the future symposium. Also hosting the exhibition, according to my experience, it was a very luxurious experience. We need a huge budget. So hopefully the symposium would be more practical in the future. Thank you for asking the question.
Thank you. That
Thanks.
was great.
Thanks, Angela. Tamara, I see you have a question as well. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, I'm actually a student of Professor Ans, and I just wanted to thank her for the coordinating the symposium. It was fantastic. But my question is, what is next as far as graphic design projects for you?
Yes, I remember your question that I was about to answer your question that, yeah, to initiate this level of exhibition and symposium, it was started from 2016. So it take at least several years to initiate and incubate this level of the research project. Now I'm incubating actually several projects. One is design for social belonging. It would be exhibition. Also design for accessibility. Also plural typography from the history of calligraphy to the generative typography. Also the 50th anniversary exhibition for the SEGD. I hope I would host a UW. That's the possible concrete plan that I'm preparing. Thank you, Tamara, to ask the question.
And Deb, I see one more in here. I'll look to see if there are others, but Colleen, you had a question for Ciera. Would you like to ask that?
Yeah, hi. Wait, I don't think you can see me. Never mind. That's not important. But if you can hear me, that's great. Ciera, I loved your presentation. That was incredible. What awesome exhibition design. It really made me excited. Could you speak a little bit about why you emphasized during your presentation about having limited device uses and what attracted you to RFID tracking devices instead of maybe using personal cell phones or exhibition when like we give you our own technology?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Colleen. I went back and forth forever about this. In fact, I originally started thinking I might do like augmented reality as a way to share multiple perspectives. Ultimately, the CHESS study and it was done in 2014. So phone usage has obviously increased and improved since then. They really found that like the biggest limiting factor was getting someone from a physical exhibition moment to something on their device and connecting those two things from a story perspective. And the other thing for me was about the activation. I love the prevalence of QR codes. It's so important, but I was really trying to search for a solution that was had more of a thematic story. I don't know what a QR code tells me other than sort of pulling me out of the story for a minute and putting me back. And especially when I was trying to tell a historical story. So I did a lot of thinking, but then of course, everyone's carrying a personal computer in their pocket. So you don't have to power that. But anyway, I landed on the RFID after doing a lot of research, mostly that I wanted people to move really freely and naturally and have it be totally organic. And I do think that sort of as technology improves, like we're going to start having device-free augmented reality around us. This is sort of coming. So I wanted to try to find ways using existing technology for visitors to feel like the story they were receiving and the story of the exhibition were the same, as opposed to these moments where on other apps and things, you see an exhibition and then you get your individual content. So that was sort of why, and RFID really provides a lot of that opportunity. And the other thing too is I wanted the adaptive storytelling system to be as simple as possible. Like artificial intelligence down the road will do this in like a way more sophisticated way than what I did here. But it does seem like we have a lot of technology opportunities to stay really attuned to the story. And that's what I wanted to try to do.
That's awesome. It's really interesting since there was also an app component, but it was more like a take home, like you might take home a gallery pamphlet or a map.
Yeah,
so it's really
that's
fascinating.
Thank you.
Thanks, Colleen. Thanks, Ciera. Adam has a question for Yun.
Hi, me again. I was very curious to hear about the indigenous typography project.
Oh, yeah.
I know it
Yes.
was a small piece of very broad and important topic, but it caught my eye.
Thank you for the question. That one of my colleagues, Henrik Nadi, who is a full-time lecturer in the graphic design program at UW. He is originally from Brazil. Also, he is a co-founder of Typocracia. Typocracia is like typecon or a type file in Brazil, Portuguese. So Typocracia is an indigenous typography movement in Brazil to provide educational opportunities since 1998 or 1993. So they have been providing around more than 100 workshops for Portuguese. That's why when I invite his project Typocracia into this project, I use a term, indigenous typography movement project in Brazil. And he exhibited his Typocracia conference posters over 10 years at the exhibition Evolving Graphic Design. Thank you for asking the question.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for our speakers? If I've missed your question in the chat, I apologize. Please flag it for my attention, but does anyone have any other questions?
I would like to pose one question for both of our panelists. And that question is, we face many social problems today. And I'm curious how you think either the integration of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the teams that we, design teams we build, or adaptive storytelling can be used as a way to address some particularly wicked problems that we are facing as a society. What thoughts do you guys have?
Can I answer that? I think rather than adaptive storytelling, I will talk about the answer with the diversity and equity issues that it's important for design educators to teach diversity in design education. That I do. I teach user experience for graphic design. That it's obviously the user experience class. That it's not focusing on prototyping. It's focused on from user research, interview, go to customer journey map and user flow and typical personas, go to prototype and developing documentation, professional documentation. That I use my project, social homelessness on US campuses. I have a class project, social homelessness at UW Medicine. So my student design an app for how to create supporting system, how to design community to bring diversity. It's not easy. Most of the students who are taking user experience for graphic design, they are only 22 or 21, 23. They are still young to talk about or be aware about diversity. But I think, yes, I embedded diversity in design education that even they may not understand diversity issue in that age, probably someday they would understand, I hope. That's why I'm integrating diversity in design education. Thank you for the question.
It's wonderful. Ciera, what do you think?
Sure. As I was doing my research, especially on historical empathy, I was really moved by a lot of stories of exhibitions that helped bring communities together. And a lot of the examples that moved me in particular were in different parts of Europe where communities were still divided over different struggles. There was a great exhibition in Ireland I learned about. But, you know, I was thinking about the role that history museums can play in helping folks, and especially right now, us in America, to understand, reckon with, examine our histories, and to really dig into the like full complexities that are there. And I actually think there's probably a long range of things that require that attention that history museums have been doing for a long time. But I wanted to sort of think about how we can address where our visitors are at today, this sort of particular moment where we may all be a little extra clenched about ourselves and our worldviews, and to find a way to work with technology and history to make a meaningful impact on each individual visitor from exactly where they're at that moment in their lives. So that's what excited me, as well as the opportunity. Developing historical empathy can go hand in hand with empathy for others, can go hand in hand with conversations with other visitors in the gallery that maybe had a different experience than the visitor did. And that's really why it mattered to me.
That's terrific. Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions for our panel today?
I have a question for you. I'm curious as to how people outside of the design program, if they did, visited the exhibition and what their response was. It seems like you did a good job to promote it. Did you get a lot of visitation outside of the academic and student community?
It's not a lot, but we have enough audience from outside of the department. Can I share about my experience that my graphic design program was very modern when I joined in 2018. Also, the art department didn't have a huge inspiration how to use graphic design, how to collaborate with graphic design. Do you understand? Because people who have no background or experience in graphic design may think graphic design is just poster design or magazine design. Do you understand that this exhibition was, because it was closed last Friday, this exhibition was an educational opportunity for my art department, School of Education, because the art department is located in the School of Education. So art department, School of Education, UW community, also medicine, Wisconsin, entire surrounding area, that it was inspiration, how they can correlate graphic design. Environmental graphic design, experiential graphic design, it's many range of graphic design also. How to use graphic design moving forward to transdisciplinary graphic design, that it was such a great educational opportunity for the community at UW and outside of the community.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it travel because the diversity of the artists and the expressions that they have, I think really get that across. And then I want to ask Ciera something almost from the opposite spectrum. Ciera, your project and its location seems like, and I was at that museum many years ago, but it tends to get kind of people coming, I think, have a particular notion of what they're going to get when they come there. And it is an interesting opportunity to maybe turn that upside down a little bit for them and have an unexpected outcome. I mean, was that, just curious about your selection of that particular museum?
Absolutely. So part of my own internal joke is that Seldom Is Heard is also a Gene Autry song. And Gene Autry also has a fascinating history. He played a role in banning women from certain events in the rodeo back in the day. So actually just the founder of the museum itself has like many touch points to cowgirls, which I thought were sort of interesting. But I ultimately picked the Autry because they have done a lot of interesting work, especially in recent years, to sort of really reconcile with sort of all facets of the American West. They've done a lot of work with Native American and tribal communities in California. And they're also constantly reckoning with this tension between the sort of Hollywood West of Gene Autry and sort of the West West. And I think Cowgirls winds up sort of really perfectly in the middle of all of that for them. And I also got a chance to go and visit, and they have a long permanent exhibition on cowboys and a little sliver for cowgirls. And so I enjoyed coming up with the expansion of that for them at this moment in time. But completely, the contrast of Hollywood cowgirl versus like the real grit that many women experienced was something I would hope Autry visitors could walk away with.
Okay, it seems like we may be wrapped up, and as has never happened before in SUGD history since I joined, we're actually ahead of schedule, but I think that's because we had some people that weren't able to present. So I'm going to propose, and anyone who's participating is free to speak up and let me know if this works for them. But what I would suggest is that we take another 15-minute break and we regroup at 3:30 and then do our breakouts. Joelle, does that work for you?
Yeah, that's fine. That works great.
Okay. So Joelle, I'll turn it over to you to wrap up this session.
Yeah, sure. Well, I just want to say thank you to all the moderators and the presenters today. It's just been such an incredibly inspirational day, and I've gotten so much from the interaction today. So thank you for all of your brilliance and sharing your great minds. I wanted to pose at the end of the breakout sessions just for a short, so if you can hang on afterwards, just a short way to sort of recap, if you don't mind, some of the themes that have emerged today. So just to give you a little bit of time to think about that, I think that'll be really important for us as we move forward and really think about the topics we want to explore next year. So if you can think about that, that would be great, and kind of share that in the chat as we kind of transition out of the breakout sessions, because I think a lot of things will emerge from that experience as well. So thank you.
Yeah, so we're gonna, just to remind everyone, so we're gonna break now. It's 3:15 East Coast time. We will reconvene at 3:30, and then you'll have the option of 2 different breakout sessions. And I think these are going to be really productive, interesting, and it's an opportunity to have some face-to-face socializing and networking time. So I will see you all back here at 3:30. Thank you.